Spotlight. Now we bring you a discussion on key outcomes of 40th GST Council Meeting. The participants are Economic Analyst K.A. Badrinath and Ruchika Chitravanshi.
Today, the GST Council held its 40th meeting. It was for the first time after the imposition of the nationwide lockdown. And there has been a clamor for tax relief by industry lobby on one side, and there has been pressure from states to shore up their tax revenues. Some of the important decisions taken today include rate cut for small taxpayers and also that no late fees would be charged in case of late filing of returns for period between July 2017 to January 2020. Badrinath sir, what are your key takeaways from the announcements that were made after the GST Council meeting today?
This is the 40th meeting of the GST Council and the first time that GST Council has met perhaps on several issues relating to the GST and GST-related issues. There seems to be some amount of consensus on providing a lot of relief for the small GST taxpayers who have not been able to pay their tax or file their returns and things like that. Many of the GST taxpayers who did not file their returns for taxation period of 2017 to January 2020, there are a lot of pending tax returns have been there. You know the GST returns have to be filed every month, and if you don't file one, then the second, third gets delayed. There is a lot of pending of tax returns filing in several of the GST tax returnees, and the decision, which has been unanimous along with the state finance minister, seems to be that in the cases of tax returns where there is no tax liability as such, then the GST Council has decided not to charge any late fees which is normally applicable in such returns. The late fee normally applicable is about ₹50 per day. If it is 1 month, then you can calculate how much it is. And for small taxpayers, the annual revenue is up to 5 crores, where there is no liability and they will have to just file the returns. They don't need to pay any late fees, and they can just file it and forget about it. As per the GST Act, you have to file GSTR 3. That needs to be filed without any tax liability. If it does, no late fee. In the case of second set of GST return, there is a tax liability there and tax is payable and it has not been filed on time, GST return. If they will not be charged ₹50 per day. Instead, for the whole delayed period, what they would be paying in terms of the late fees is just ₹500 at the maximum. But there will not be any relief in terms of interest payment, or there will not be any relief in terms of tax that needs to be paid to the government as per the tax laws that are prescribed as on that date. This again, the relief is for capping of the late fee at ₹500 is only for the small taxpayers whose annual revenue is up to 5 crore rupees.
And what is the time period for which this is applicable for the small taxpayers?
For the taxpayers, they will have to pay between July 1 and September 30th, and this is a window that has been opened by the government at the GST Council to clean up the pendency, and whatever is applicable up to before till January 2020, this window is applicable. Yet another decision which relates to tax payments between February, March and April, because during March started the lockdown, the COVID pandemic, and so February, March and April, if your tax has to be paid, then you can start paying the up to July 5th. July 5th is the time when you have to pay in normal circumstances.
Okay.
But the GST Council has decided that you can pay your tax between July 1 to September 30th, the interest rate which is chargeable for late payment of the taxes or the late filing of the return has been slashed to from 18%, it has been brought down to 9%. It's a huge relief in terms of small taxpayers whose returns you will say that okay, revenue is up to 5 crore rupees.
So obviously there is a lot of pressure to improve this dwindling demand in the economy. Businesses have been shut for so long. There is a lot of economic pressure on them, which is obviously going to affect our tax collections as well. What is your sense of what will be the revenue shortfall and how will it impact the whole fiscal situation of the centre?
Everybody understands that there is a possibility of a contraction in the economy, and different independent agencies have come up with different figures in terms of economic contraction. During the last 2-3 months, whatever little taxes that have been paid, GST, if the GST is an indicator of what the economy is all about, how the economic activity is faring and all that. In these 3 months, March, April and May, the GST tax collections as per the Finance Ministry officials is about 45%. And there has been a detailed presentation made by the government officials to these states on the GST collection, and also states are aware how much is the GST. Say for example, normally you expect about 1 lakh crore that needs to come in as GST collection because of the regular economic activity. But if it is 45%, that means almost there would be a shortage of about 50 to 55%, because still the final figures needs to be compiled because there is an extended date for payment of taxes till September 30th. Here that it may slightly improve by another 4 to 5%. That means around 50,000 crores is what you are going to be your GST collection per month in the last 3 months, that is March, April and May. There is definitely a contraction in the economy, and the goods movement has been slow. The services sales have been slow. But if you look at it, India is in a much, much better position. Several other countries, including the best of the states like United States, best of the economies, if you see, Indian position is much, much better. And the contraction or the disruption in the economy seems to be manageable in the next 1 to 2 years.
So one of the things that was being talked about, liberalizing the input credit provision. So what is your take on that? How do businesses make use of the GST provisions and the adverse impact they are facing on working capital, which is making it difficult for them, for the businesses to pay GST in time?
Input credit is an issue which a lot of companies have raised because they think that the businesses are doing very slow and the unlock phase 1 has begun. Just a lot of businesses from retail trading to manufacturing and services have been slow. Export markets have been also very slow in terms of purchase of goods and services, and also the shipping lines have been impacted. The air cargo services have been virtually stopped. They wanted some kind of a relief in terms of input tax credit. This is come up perhaps at the finance minister's meeting with the state government, but as of now, there has not been much of a decision on this issue. There is going to be one more meeting sometime in July. That is what the finance minister has indicated, to discuss the revenue losses faced by the state as well as the centre because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is at that point of time that the input credit related issues may come up for discussion in July.
So this is definitely, it's a crisis here and there will be departures from the usual rules of fiscal prudence. Do you think this is an opportunity to have a reimagined GST, and what features do you think it should have?
For example, inversion of duties. You pay more on the inputs and the final product is charged less. Because of that, there's a lot of unintended refunds that are going to the companies and people who are paying the GST. So there has been more or less a consensus on the tax inversion rates and all that. And there has been several sectors which have been identified where there could be a reform in the GST structure. For example, it could be in terms of footwear, mobile phones, fertilizers. So these are some of the textiles where there is a duty inversion kind of a situation. There is a lot of issues that are concerning there. And there has been a consensus on what has to be done, the rates and how it should be implemented, when it should be implemented. This is an issue which has been for another day. The government will have to take a call, if not today, in the next meeting.
So how does all of this situation impact the center-state fiscal balance? And is there a need to revisit that?
There was a detailed presentation as per the finance minister made in the GST Council meeting today on the possible scenarios that are going to be playing out last 3 months and the next 6 months of 1 year. So perhaps they must be bracing up for the worst case scenario, but the economic activity is starting very slowly. Maybe the GST collections are likely to pick up in the next 2-3 months, slowly but firmly. This could be the scenario where you would project your revenue. So my guess is, if there has to be any reforms, perhaps there have been few states which have been seeking reforms or reimagining GST to suit this kind of a situation, and where whatever little issues that are there that need to be sorted out while the economic activity picks up in the next 2-3 months. For example, there has been a suggestion by some states that you need to, what should happen to sharing between on the IGST, the state IGST it is called that. So perhaps there is a group of ministers headed by the state finance minister of Bihar, who is also the deputy chief minister, Mr. Sushil Kumar Modi, which is going to look into some of these issues, like, sharing of IGST, then what should be the way forward in terms of for the GST. And there have been issues like way bills earlier. There have been issues relating to, input tax credits. There have been issues, refunds being given unnecessarily or unintentionally. Or there have been issues that have been detected, like how GST's ecosystem is being manipulated by some of the companies and people across the value chain. And at one point of time, there was a projection that about 40,000 crores is the kind of GST pilferage that has happened because of the systemic manipulation. How can this be fixed? These are some of the issues which have been there for quite some time. This is perhaps the right time to fix all these loopholes and set the system in order, so that when the economy picks up in a bigger way, then the GST will become a formidable instrument to support economic activity.
Absolutely. As you said, that economic activity is picking up, and I think the government is also treading very carefully when it comes to these reforms. Surely there's an opportunity here as well, because economy will revive, if not today,